right, well, welcome again to Lighthouse Church. My name is Kika, pastor here, and I'm so excited to be with you. So thanks for joining us this morning, whether you're here in person or online. We're so excited to be together. So we are starting a brand new series together, and I'm calling this Christian or Disciple. Christian or disciple. What is the difference between a Christian and a disciple? I'm going to anchor on one verse this morning, and I don't have this quite up. It's somewhere in there. It's Matthew 16, verse 24. So I'm going to read it for us, and then we're going to dive in. Matthew 16, 24. This is what Jesus says. Listen to his words. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to become my disciple, whoever wants to become my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me." Whoever wants to become my disciple. Now, it's interesting because more often than not, we use the word Christian for maybe people who believe in Jesus, maybe people who maybe go to church that's what we use. That's the term that we use. You are maybe a Christian. But what's interesting is that word Christian only shows up in the Bible 3 times. The word Christian only shows up in the Bible 3 times. And in Acts 11, we have this up, 26, the first slide, it says this is the first time we see the word Christian, and it says it was at Antioch, which is a big city in the region where all of this Bible stuff was happening. It was in Antioch that the believers were first called Christians. So actually, they didn't even give themselves this name. Christians didn't say, "Oh, we are Christians," or Christ ones is really what that translates to. That was a name given to them. People actually used it as a way to almost identify them, to really mock them. They were saying, "Oh, these people who follow this way, this person, Jesus," they almost sometimes thought of it as a cult. They said, "These are Christians." Because disciple is a word that really means someone who follows another person. But here we see them as Christians. And then the second time we see this is in Acts as well, in chapter 26, verse 28. There's Herod Agrippa. He's one of the kings, King Herod, and he's having a conversation with Paul, who we've been talking about for the last few weeks. And Paul is really sharing the gospel with King Herod Agrippa, and Agrippa's looking back at him, and he's hearing Paul's testimony, and he just looks back at Paul, and he says this to Paul. He said, "Paul, do you think that you can persuade me to become a Christian so quickly?" He's hearing the gospel. He's hearing Paul share his testimony, what's happening in his life. And so what we get from this passage here is we can tell that a Christian is something that you really become. He's saying, do you think I can become a Christian? So it's something that you become by the hearing of the gospel, by the hearing of what someone is saying. Do you think I can become a Christian? Now, if you've kind of been around church for a while, maybe you grew up at church, maybe you've been to some church camps, you've probably heard a few times that really to become a Christian, it's not that hard. To become a Christian, it's not that hard. You might have heard some verses like Ephesians 2, 8 and 9, and I have this up, and it says this: God saved you by his grace when you believed. And you can't take credit for this. It is a gift. It's a gift from God. It's not that hard to receive a gift. You're not doing anything to receive that gift. Salvation is not a reward for good things you have done. It's not something you do to get this gift. It's not something you earn. It's just something that's given to you. So really, it's pretty easy to become a Christian. And then here, maybe you've heard another verse. I love this. Actually, Mike has been quoting this to me all week this week from Romans 10. And it says this: if you declare with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. If you declare with your mouth and believe in your heart, how hard is it to say something? How hard is it to believe? If you say and believe, you will be saved. You will become a Christian. So really, based on these passages that we see in the Bible, to become a Christian, it's really already done for us. It's something that you cannot earn. And I actually believe this. This is true. The Bible teaches us this. There's nothing that we could do to earn salvation. There's nothing that we can do to earn this right to become a Christian. And if anyone ever tells you that, no, you've got to do something to earn salvation, let me tell you, I think you've got to go to another church. If someone ever tells you that there is a way to earn your way into heaven, you've got to check your Bible. Because that is not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches us what we just read, these passages that are so often quoted. Because how could God, the creator of the universe, the creator of you and me, possibly ever need from you? How could you ever possibly do anything for the God of the world? We can't. There's nothing we can do. And so what these passages are really telling us is that to become a Christian, you believe in what Jesus did. But then we might ask, if something that cost God so much, how could something that cost God so much cost so little? How could God giving up his one and only Son so that we might become Christians be so easy for us to receive? And some of us might even have a hard time accepting this. Some of us might say, man, I don't know if I can accept this. Usually in this culture, I got to work for what I have. I got to work for my reputation. I got to work for what my friends or family say about me. I got to make my way up there. But how is it that what cost God so much cost me so little? Now, while this term Christian is only used 3 times in the Bible, the term disciple, Jesus didn't use the term Christian, but the term disciple, Jesus uses over and over and over again. He's used almost 300 times in the New Testament. Disciple. There's a difference between a Christian and a disciple. And that leads us to kind of our first point this morning together, which we're calling, is a Christian always a disciple of Jesus? Is a Christian always a disciple of Jesus? Now, have you guys ever seen an NBA draft? Yeah, okay. All right. Here's what happens, right? At the NBA draft, there's a guy in a tuxedo standing up on the stage. It's being cast nationally. There's all of these players who have been playing for a long time, and they're waiting, and they're hoping. They can't wait to hear their name be called so they can be drafted onto this incredible team, this NBA team, National Basketball Association. So we're going to kind of role play this, all right? So I have my friend Mike Milkey here, so you can stay there. But let's pretend, right? Put my tuxedo on. Ladies and gentlemen, for the 2021 NBA draft, Chicago Bulls are going to draft from West Roxbury, the one and only Michael Milkey. Mike Milkey, come on up here. Come on, take the stage. Wow, incredible, sir. Wow. Okay, hold your jersey. Now, smile for the camera while we shake hands. Amazing, amazing. Okay, you can have a seat here. This is where we sit. Wow. Mike has been waiting all his life to make it onto this team. He made it onto this team. He got a jersey that's a little bit too small for him, but we'll change that later. But he made it onto the team. He's on the team, and he's now on the bench for the team. And, you know, a lot of times when you watch basketball games, whether it's little kid basketball or grown-up NBA basketball, when someone's sitting on the bench, what do they usually say to the coach? What do they say? Put me in, coach. Put me in. Now, do you know that there are some basketball players, NBA basketball players, who go through this whole process, who get drafted, who take the picture, who have a jersey, and then for the rest of their career for that team, just hang out. That's what they call a bench warmer. You know why they call it a bench warmer? They keep the bench warm, the players that are in the game, so that when they come back, the seat is nice and warm. They're a bench warmer, just sitting, hanging out here. Now, in the NBA, it's actually not that easy to get drafted. You got to work. It's really the opposite of our faith. Our faith, if you believe, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Christ has died on the cross and God raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. Then you are on the team. Then you've made it. You've got your jersey. Your jersey has Jesus on it and maybe Team Jesus and your name back on the back. You're on the team. But how often are us Christians? We get the jersey, we make it on the team, and then just hang out on the bench, warming it up. I'm here warming up the bench for you guys. You're doing great out there. I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to hang out here. It's sad. It's honestly sad when you watch that kid at the basketball game just sitting there. Coach, please, put me in, coach. Just 1 minute. Please. It's even worse when it's like a full grown coach, please, put me in, coach. Just 1 minute, I won't play. It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad to watch them sit on the bench. They're on the team. They've made it. Here's this, maybe to try to simplify it. How could something that cost God so much cost us so little? And here's what I want to say about it. We'll put it on the screen. Listen to this. Salvation, getting on the team. Salvation by faith in Jesus, which is what we read in Ephesians and in Romans and all over the Bible. Salvation will cost you nothing. It costs God everything, but it will cost you nothing. But discipleship, by following Jesus, will cost you everything. Salvation will cost you nothing, but discipleship will cost you everything. We read this earlier. We're going to read it again. Here's what Jesus says. Matthew 16:24. Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must" what? "Deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me." Salvation, yes, this is a free gift. Man, I can't believe I made it on the team. I'm saved. I believe in Jesus. I'm going to heaven. You've made it onto the team. Salvation will cost you nothing. Discipleship will cost you everything. This is going to take us to our second point, which we're going to call, don't settle for salvation. Don't settle for salvation. If salvation costs you nothing, discipleship costs you everything, let me tell you this, don't settle for salvation. And I actually have a hard time saying that. I have a hard time saying don't settle for salvation because the word settle is like, whatever. What do you mean, whatever? Salvation costs God everything. How can we just settle for salvation? So if you feel a little uncomfortable, I feel a little uncomfortable even saying this, but hear me out. Hear me out. Salvation is just step one. Salvation is the first step. You get drafted onto the team. You make it onto the team. But so far, we've been up here, Mike's been up here 10 minutes, and all he's done, warm up that bench. Doing a great job warming up the bench. He did step one. He got in. He's on the team. Now, would you say that he's in the NBA if this was real? Is he in the NBA? He got drafted. I would say, yeah, he is on the NBA. But would you say he's an NBA player? Like, is he really a player if he just sits there? He's like an NBA sitter more so than an NBA player. He's just hanging out here. That's all he's doing. He's just sitting. He's got step one. But, dude, what are you doing? Why can't you get in the game? And the difference is in the NBA, they're waiting for the coach to put him in. But in this world where we are disciples of Jesus, where we are following Jesus, we're not waiting for God to put us in. Once we believe, once we receive what God has given to us, this is not something that we just, well, God, just let me know. Just give me a call, shoot me a text. Be like, all right, it's time. No, this is, you believe, you live out your faith. If you are a disciple of Jesus, a disciple means someone who follows. You are following Jesus. You're not sitting there. You are following. There is a difference between being a Christian and being a disciple. A disciple who's following, who's in the game. Sometimes I like to think of it maybe a little bit differently. When you're a Christian, when you become a Christian, sometimes, we read in Corinthians, if you receive Jesus, you become a new creation. We see it in Nicodemus, in the story of Nicodemus with Jesus and Nicodemus. Jesus tells him, if you want to become a Christian, what do you got to do? You've got to become born again. So it's almost like if you become a Christian, you have this new birth, and you become this baby Christian. And some of us maybe became a Christian a few months ago. Some of us maybe became a Christian a few years ago. Some of us maybe became a Christian 20 years ago, 50 years ago. But to this day, we're still, you might be a 50-year-old baby Christian. Because all you've done is warm up that bench. You've been sitting there. Mama, feed me. Mama, help me. I'm coming to church so I can get some food. All right, great. That's good. But if we're just baby Christians, if we're just sitting here all the time and we're not getting in the game, maybe we're just Christians and not really disciples of Jesus, followers of Jesus, taking action with our faith rather than just sitting back, relaxing, watching the show. And here's maybe another situation. Maybe some of us find ourselves, we became a Christian a few years ago, and when we first, we were actually so excited about our faith, and we took some steps. We got up and we started following Jesus, and we went to grow in our faith, and we took some action steps, whatever those action steps are. Reading scripture on your own, growing in a community, taking steps in your faith. But then after a few years, it's like, okay, I got busy, I have school, I got work, I have friends, and my friends, honestly, they're not really pushing me toward following Jesus, so I kind of take a few steps back. And I end up back where I started. I grew a little bit, but then I settled for salvation. I went back to settle for salvation. And you know what? If that's how you feel, you're not the first to feel that. You're not the only one to feel that. Centuries ago, and when it happened, it was happening to a lot of people. I mean, it was the early church and the disciples, and they were all on fire, and they were all following Jesus, and they were making more disciples, and they were all following Jesus and taking steps. But then after a little bit, we're busy, we've got some stuff, and Christianity became kind of part of the culture. Even the government was Christian. Even the schools were Christian. Even the whatever, it was all Christian. So it came to a point where you couldn't even tell the difference between the Christians and the non-Christians, because the Christians weren't really living out their faith. They were just bench warmers. They were sitting back, relaxing, watching the show. And then because of this, some people were like, no, we want to live out our faith more. And so the whole monastic movement happened. What is a monastic movement? Good question. The monastic movement is the whole monks thing, right? The robes and these hoods and sitting in the building and reading the Bible and praying, then reading the Bible some more, and then praying some more, and then reading the Bible some more, and then praying some more. And that's like all some of them did. And so they were like, if we really want to follow God, if we really want to take our faith seriously and get off the bench, then really the church was even saying, well, you've got to become a monk. That's where you can be a real disciple of Jesus. But the rest of you guys, we understand. You've settled for salvation. We're glad you're saved, but that's fine. You're busy. You have families. You have work. You've got school. Settled for salvation. But if you really want to take your faith, go ahead, become a monk. Put on this robe, read, listen, pray, stay in this building the whole rest of your life. And so people got used to this divide that happened. It became normal for the super Christians to become monks and priests and leaders in the church, and then all the rest of us, we settled for salvation. We're Christians. We're good. We've made it into heaven. We've followed Jesus to the point where we are now saved. That's it. We've settled for salvation. There was a divide. But the problem is, this is not biblical. This is not what the Bible teaches. There is no separation between the people who are supposed to be following Jesus, disciples of Jesus, and just those who settle for. There's no such thing in the Bible as settling for salvation. In fact, the Apostle John writes in Revelation, he's writing to the church in Laodicea, or however you say it, and he's telling them, guys, you're lukewarm Christians. You're like half in, half out. We're like, we're not sure. We got our foot in, but we've also got a foot out. Why is he saying that? I think he's saying that because they're a church. They believe in Jesus. They're followers of Jesus as Christians, but they've taken a step back from really being disciples, from really living out their faith. And before that, people are like, well, you can't judge me because I'm not a monk. You can't judge me on the way that I live. I'm saved. I'm a Christian. But you can't judge me because I'm not a priest. You can't judge me because I'm not a church leader. But what wiggle room do we see in the scriptures? Where do we see that there's some sort of divide between those who settle for salvation and those who are really following Jesus? We started this initiative this summer called Who's Your One. We can kind of put the logo on the screen. And if you haven't heard about Who's Your One, it's a way to encourage our community to not just be benchwarmers. I asked Mike to sit here the whole time so you can just watch. You can clap for Mike. Yeah, we can give him a hand. He's doing great. How uncomfortable is that? Just sitting here. Why? Because I just want this picture to be glued in your head. When you start to feel like you're just sitting back, settling for salvation, you just sit here. You're letting other people do the work. When God has put you on the team for a reason, you're not just supposed to sit there. He's put you, if you're on the team, you're on the team for a purpose. You're on the team for a reason. But anyway, back to the Who's Your One thing. If you are a believer, we want to encourage our community, hey, at least have one person that you're praying for. At least have one person that you're praying and saying, God, open up opportunities for me to have conversations with them about you. God, give me a chance to share my faith. God, give them an opportunity, their hearts to be softened and their ears to be open to hearing what you have to say. Do we even have one person that we're praying for? Or are we benchwarmers? Are we living out our faith? Or are we just baby Christians sitting back, relaxing, and watching the show? Now, I want to go back to Matthew 16, where Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. That's the NLT version, the New Living Translation. Now, the ESV is a little bit more closer to the text. It's a little bit more accurate in terms of translation. Okay, let's put that up there if it's working. Okay, it's the ESV translation, and it says this: Then Jesus come after me. The NLT says, whoever wants to be my disciple. But in the ESV, it says, if anyone would come after me. Hear the difference. The NLT doesn't say the word disciple. The ESV says, if anyone would come after me. He's not even saying if you want to be my disciple. He's just saying if you want to come after me. Because some of us are like, well, you know what, Kika, I hear you, but I'm still going to settle for salvation. Jesus isn't even saying if you want to be saved. He says if you want to come after me, if anyone, me, you, anybody, not just the super Christians, not just the monks, if anyone would come after me, what are they going to do? Let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Now, that does not sound as easy to me as just confessing with my mouth and believing in my heart. Jesus is saying if anybody is to follow me, if any single one of us is to follow Jesus, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. There is no wiggle room. There is no those who settle for salvation and those who are in the game. There is no bench warmers and those who are in. If you are following Jesus, you're not just a Christian. You're a disciple of Jesus. You are one who is following Jesus day in and day out. Following Jesus. Now, this might sound hard. This might sound difficult. This might sound like, you know what, Kika, I'm not sure that I even really want this anymore. Why would I want to deny myself and take up a cross? Jesus is literally showing us a picture of how difficult this might be. Why would I want that for myself? Why would I want that kind of life? And that's what Jesus is saying in verse 24. Now watch and listen to what he says in verse 25. This is why we should want this. This is why this is the only way to live out our faith. Look at what he says in verse 25. For whoever wants to save their life, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me will find it. If you want to live a life that is worth living, if you want to live a life that is full of the goodness of God, if you want to save your life, to save it for something that is greater than maybe what you're feeling now, what you're doing now, then you will lose it. Then you will give it up to Jesus, because in that kind of life, in a life that is actually following, you are a disciple, you are walking after Jesus. There you will find the fullness of life. Living as a bench warmer Christian, look at how bored he looks. It's boring. You're not living a life that's in the game. If we're in the game, life is full of action. Life is full of joy. Man, you're going to hear a little bit from Mike about an outreach opportunity that we've been doing. And let me tell you, when I do things like this outreach, that is the most, the highest level of life that I feel. I love my life. I love living. But man, when I feel like I'm living in the purpose of Jesus, when I feel like, man, I have a mission that I'm after, man, I'm giving my all to this. Even if it's just playing some basketball with some people who don't know Jesus. Maybe if it's just having a conversation. Maybe if it's just talking with a friend who I know, man, Maybe they're seeking God. Maybe they're having a hard time. Maybe they need to hear the good news. Man, I never feel more alive than in those moments. So Jesus is saying, if you want to save your life, you have to lose it. If you want to follow me and have that life to the full that I promise, losing your life is going to be worth it all. So how can you live like this? How can you live like this in your job, at your school, on summer vacation, with your family, in your friendships, in the relationship that you're trying to build with that guy or that girl? How can I put my all into Jesus with my money, when I'm angry, when I'm excited, when in my free time, with my possessions, with the things that are my hobbies or the things that I enjoy? What about in my laziness? What about in my temptations, in my flaws, and in my failures? How can I focus on Jesus? How can I follow Jesus in all of those steps? How can I be a disciple who is actively following and not just a bench warmer? Not just a sideline Christian, not just an observer, not just a baby Christian, even though I've been a Christian for 10 years. What do I need to do to set my eyes on Jesus, to focus on him, to really follow him? We're going to talk about that more in the next few weeks. What does it really mean to be a disciple of Jesus rather than just a Christian who's settled for salvation? But the first thing we can do this morning is to pray and ask God, God, help me to set my eyes on you, that you would be where my eyes are set in every area of my life, that when I go to school, I'm your disciple. That when I'm at home, I'm your disciple. That when I'm angry, I'm following in your steps as your disciple. When I'm walking into temptation, man, I'm still going to follow you. I'm going to follow you out of that temptation. When I am struggling with anxiety and fear and my mind is full of worries and it's a battlefield, man, I am going to follow Jesus as his disciple. So we've got to pray and ask God, God, would you help me to fix my eyes on you in every area of my life? Help me to be not just a Christian who's on the sidelines, who's a bench warmer. I've made it onto the team, but I don't want to settle for salvation. I don't want that to just be enough. I want to live my life for you. I want to live the life that's full of purpose, that's full of you. Help me to walk in step with you. So we're going to close out with a song together called Be Thou My Vision. It's an old song. It's a hymn. And in this song, it's really a prayer. I want to sing it as a prayer. And we're asking God, God, would you be my vision? Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Not be all else to me, save that thou art. Nothing else, Jesus, will do. Nothing else. Let me hold on to you. Let me follow you, that you would be my everything, O Lord of my heart. Can we just thank Mike for doing a great job? It's awesome, bro. You can have a seat. So as we sing this song, like I said, I want this to be our prayer. So why don't you just stay kind of in your seats? You don't have to stand up. And maybe some of you know this song, maybe some of you don't. And it's because it's a hymn, it's a little bit old English, so it might be a little bit harder to understand. But as you look at these words, I want you to pray let this be the prayer of my heart. If I really want to be a disciple of Jesus, if I want to stop settling for salvation and taking the next step and stop just being a baby Christian, this has to be our first next step. Pray and ask God, God, would you be the one who my eyes are fixed on in every area of my life? Let's take a few minutes and pray, and then we'll pray together through this song.